们这一次呢，为了要筹备这个展览呢，我们把有一些彻底清理了一下。以前有的东西你想处理又舍不得，结果一下弄到有600-700件，太多了，老实说也很费，要服侍它呀，很费劲的。我这20-30年吧，就在服侍这些东西啊。搬运工也是我，清洁工也是我，现在已经85了马上现在是86了。我想不能这样子被这些东西拖累的这样，要把它好好清理一下。我们现在着重把明代的加强，有一些常见的或者重复的，我们就准备这个拿一部分来换成更精一点的东西。
Well, hello, this is Peter Combs from Bidamount.com and P.L. Combs Asian Art in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and today is April 17th, 2019, and as you just saw in that interview with Mr. Ko, he was the founder of, he and his brother are the founders of the collection, the Tianminlou collection, and you gotta love the guy. He's 86 years old and he wants to upgrade his collection, which already has 600 or 700 pieces in it. And as it mentioned, they decided to deaccession or sell off some of the pieces that he felt had been exhibited plenty of times, and they needed to bring in some fresh blood. And when you're collecting at that level, this is the kind of stuff I guess you sell when you're trying to freshen up your collection a little bit. It's phenomenal, this collection. And the first lot in the sale was this, the Junyao Moon White Narcissus Bowl, early Ming Dynasty. And if you're wondering why they call these early Ming Dynasty, because typically this form has always been attributed in old journals and old writings, where these were always attributed to the Sung or the early Yuan period. And more recent research in the last 30 years has revealed that they don't think that any of these were made during those times, but they were all made in the Ming Dynasty. And there's a number of reasons that confirm this, not the least of which is that none of them are mentioned in any writings or shown in any artwork that was painted prior to the Ming Dynasty. So they weren't in any early scholarly paintings, pictures of scholars sitting at their desks. You don't see these. They didn't exist. And they've discovered some shards, they've done some digging, and they believe that these were all made during the very beginning of the Ming Dynasty now. And this happens in the Asian art world. Years ago, there were these white pieces that were on the market, and they thought that they were all Sung. It turns out they later found out they were actually all late Ming. And this is an example, again, where they're going to have to adjust the history on them due to new scholarship. But regardless, it was a spectacularly beautiful bowl, wonderful color, and if you really want to get a good look at it, come over, get the catalog out of the reference section here on the Bidamount.com site, pull it up, and you can zoom in on this and get a real sense of the glaze on this. And it ended up selling for $757,000. I have the price list over here on my left because I can't remember them all. Nobody can. But anyway, that was a very good result. It was an absolutely beautiful piece, a very unusual color. Typically, these have sort of a flambe glaze on it, which I thought made this one very interesting. Okay, and then on to this, that fabulous floral charger Yongle period, large one, 14 inches in diameter. This particular type of bowl, these were often sent by the Yongle Emperor to the Middle East. There was a tradition that began, as many of you know, in the Yuan dynasty when they suddenly began producing these massive basins and bowls that turned up in the Middle East for use in the courts there, and they were sent as tribute pieces, as gifts to open relations, and the Yongle Emperor wanted to expand his sphere of influence well beyond the borders of China, maintain good trade relations, and these pieces turned up over there. And pieces from the Middle East were also sent back to China, okay, including metal forms, which we're going to get to in just a second because of the basin. All right, this ended up selling for $665,000. Then we're going to go over here to this superb basin. This is another Yongle piece. And this was also based on a Middle Eastern, clearly on a Middle Eastern metal form that were often inlaid with bronze pieces inlaid with gold or silver or made of silver, extremely rare. This one was about 10 inches tall, beautifully decorated, and had a fairly modest estimate of $1 to $1.5 million. And it ended up making very short work of that estimate. It brought $4,308,000. All right, but an exceptional example. And later on in this, we're going to talk about another piece of stand, porcelain stand that was done in the same general era that was also based on a Middle Eastern metal form. And in that, they show the prototypes that were used from which it was developed stylistically. The Qialong Emperor loved them. All right, and now on to this, the jarlet. This is a very unusual little jar. There are not many of these known. There are about a handful of them from this period. They don't have marks on them, but they're dated to the Yongle, to the early Xuande period, and they're very small, 4 inches tall. But these dragon jars are highly desirable, absolutely beautiful. And this particular one, without a rain mark, but because of its rarity, brought $1.5 million, $1,530,000. It was a great result. And I hope you come over and look at this, because this is a really interesting thing. The heaping and piling effect, the way the dragon is drawn, the sweeping waves, the energy. It's just beautifully done. And you can get a good look at the characteristics of the top, how the glaze reflects here. And you can get a really good look at it, all right? These will not turn up in any auctions in North America, okay? I'm gonna be bold and say that right now. So if you start to see some of these turning up in auctions on Live Auctioneers, run for your life, okay? They're just not going to turn up. All right, and now we're going to move along over to this, to the first of the dice bowls. This was a nice one. This is a fruit bowl, very similar to the Richard Marchant bowl that was on the cover of the Christie's catalog. It didn't sell in March, just a few weeks ago, and I sort of speculated that it may not have sold because there were 3 of these like that one coming up in Hong Kong in this sale from Tianminlou. And I think people wanted to see how they did. Okay, well, they did pretty well. This one was 11 inches in diameter, and it carried an estimate of 383 to 640,000, not 2 to 3 million, which was on the one in New York. Now, one in New York was a little better than this, but I think this was a smarter way to go about selling it with a very reasonable estimate. And this one brought $1,859,000. Okay. And then we'll mosey on over to the, is this the next one? I'm not sure. I've got a whole list here. No, this is that very nice floral bowl. Again, Xuande period, not terribly big, 7 inches in diameter, but beautifully decorated, very, very energetically painted. I like the decoration on this, where you can see it has a very painterly look to it, and quite elegantly done, and this beautifully done scroll at the bottom, and all that good stuff. And it did well. It brought $1,399,000. So it brought basically $1.4 million, which was well beyond its estimate. Its high estimate was $765,000. The power of provenance, and the Tianminlou collection is also known not only for having extreme rarities, but pieces in superb condition. All right, this was one of their focal points when they did this, and they've talked about it in interviews, that everything has to be beautiful condition, beautiful, perfect condition. And that doesn't mean just free of cracks or repairs. It means the surface has to be good. It can't have a lot of wear. They want the full character of the bowl. When you get to this level of collecting, wear on porcelain is just as bad as a hairline, okay? And they don't want that, okay? Now, we're going to get over to... let me see, page 66 in the catalog. There, another one of these bowls. This is another Xuande period bowl, 11 inches in diameter, beautifully done, just absolutely beautiful. And this has the lotus, they call them Indian lotuses, running around the outside here on this part. Around here, these scrolls with lotus flowers popping up in the center, and they call that the Indian lotus. And a beautiful example, great color, great shading of the blue. The shading on the blue of this is really superb. And it ended up selling for, let's get the right price here, $3,083,000. Okay, so nearly $3.1 million was the price on this. And this will give you an idea what maybe, what was one of the reasons why the one in New York didn't sell. They were trying to figure out what this one would bring. Well, now they know. So I suspect somebody might be circling back to see if they can't buy the other one. All right, and then on to the Dragon Bowl. Again, a great Xuande period Dragon Bowl or Dragon Dish. And this one is quite small, only 7 inches in diameter. but beautifully drawn, nice energetically drawn dragon on here. I love Ming dragons because they're sort of goofy looking. They look rather, to me, I always think they look cartoonish compared to the Ching dragons, which tended to be rather fierce and ferocious and more pronounced. These are more relaxed, a little more humorous. And this one had them, two of them on the rim, running around in the cavetto, and then one in the center. And again, mark and period, great collection, and it did fine. It brought $1,216,000. Again, extremely rare. All right, but I'm so glad they're upgrading their collection. God. Isn't this amazing? All right. And then on to this, you have another lotus bowl. This is another great example. It's 6 inches in diameter, $380,000 to $640,000. And it ended up bringing $1,093,000, slightly less than the other example that was in this catalog. But it's slightly smaller and not quite as well painted. Beautifully painted. I'm not knocking it, but not quite as well painted or as interestingly painted. And then mosey on over to here, we have this really great gardenia dish, blue and white, Jade period, but exceptionally pretty, 7 inches. These are small. People often think of these as being great big things. They're not, okay? But the decoration on this was just great, the yellow enamel. And it's important to look at these because there are a lot of fakes of these on the market, a lot of them. They're turning up all over the internet. They're turning up in live auctioneers, not iGavel, excuse me. He's very careful about that stuff, but Invaluable, all right? And they are complete fakes, but this is a real one, and it's beautifully painted, nicely done, all right? I didn't mean to say iGavel before. Those of you that use iGavel, it's a good outfit. Lark Mason does a great job. All right, they're good people. But the other auction houses that aren't so careful, or the other auction sites that aren't so careful, you got to be very careful. But this was a great one, beautifully painted, estimated at $192,000 to $319,000, and it ended up making very short work of that estimate. It sold for $864,219, way above its estimate, more than double, almost triple its high estimate. That's the way it goes, okay? And then they were also getting rid of some Ching examples because they're focusing, according to the family, they're going to focus more on Ming pieces. So, who would want to keep this? What a beautiful Hu example with Buddhist symbols all over it, heaped and piled decoration. This was a nice big jar, 19 inches tall, mark and period, great provenance. Okay, this was bought at Sotheby's in 1977. I have no idea what they paid for it back then, but it probably wasn't much. It was probably a lot, but nowhere near what it brought today. It brought $1,246,000. But this was a great example, and again, come over and get a good look at this. The decoration on it is just superb. All right, very, very nice. And notice the little Shao characters inside of all the lotuses and all that. It's just great. And $1.2 million. And then the last one we're going to look at from this collection, this isn't all of them, there were 18 pieces. We only went through about 9 or 10 of them, but I don't want to take too much of everybody's time, was this. I just happened to like this. I thought this was a great thing. It was a Qialong, blue and white ewer done in the early Ming style, but wonderfully painted. Absolutely great. And this was bought in Hong Kong. They bought this at Sotheby's in Hong Kong in 1986, and it had an estimate of $383,000 to $640,000, and it went well over that and ended up selling for $940,000. All right, but do come over. I'll link the catalogs below, and as well as that interview that was the beginning, the full interview. It's over on The Value. It's a great website in China. If you haven't found it yet, you can find it on YouTube. They do interviews with William Schack and collectors and people, and it's a good source. It's a good. The videos are kind of short. They're about 4 minutes, 5 minutes. They're not like my long-winded things, but they're very good. They're really good, and they're well done. Okay. And now over to Six Treasures. This was a very interesting collection of about 6 items, as the title implies. And they didn't all do fabulously well, but the cover lot did really well. It's this. It's based clearly on an Islamic metal form, like the examples that were in the Tianminlou collection. It is also Yongle period, and it has this sort of pseudo-Arabic script running around it, and it's based very clearly on a Middle Eastern metal form. There is in here, there it is. They supplied an image of an Egyptian piece of metalwork from which this style was no doubt taken, and it did very well. It was estimated that what was it, 2,500,000 to 3.8, and it ended up selling right sort of in the sweet spot. It ended up selling for $3,007,007. All right. It was quite a thing and beautifully done. And again, that Middle Eastern influence on the production of porcelain connected to tribute between the Yongle Emperor, the early Ming emperors, and building relationships in the Middle East. All right, very nice. And then on to this. This was the big gun, and I think this was probably the most expensive piece of porcelain. So I'm pretty sure it is sold that entire week. Was this an extremely rare Guan Lobe Jardiniere, Southern Sung to early Yuan dynasty. These are quite small but unbelievably desirable. This thing is only 5 inches in diameter. It held an estimate of 1.9 to 2.5 million, and it ended up selling for $4,912,000. It's quite a thing. All right. This particular glaze and this particular color with this crackle and the surface on these is just so desirable because there aren't many of them around. They rarely turn up. There's a very good picture in here of the crackle. You want to examine it. If you would like to learn about monochromes, come and examine this. There are a lot of copies of these on the market, okay? A lot of copies. If you see one turning up on, live auctioneers or on Invaluable, forget it. It's not legit, okay? The likelihood is pretty close to zero. But this was a great one, and it had a good history behind it, a good exhibit history. It had come from the Alfred Clark collection at one point, one of the great legendary early collectors, and it brought $4.9 million. And that's all she wrote. Okay, and then over to here, scholarly Imperial works of art. This was a pretty good sale, but they had. I think their estimates were a bit too stiff. But one of the pieces in here that did very well, and I wanted to share it, was this. It was absolutely great. Han Jade B here, this disc, and it was mounted in a Qialong era screen that was dated. This is just such a great package. If you didn't know that the Qialong Emperor would often have stands and things made for superb objects that he had in his own collection and have them dated and sometimes inscriptions added, poems and things like that. And this was estimated at $895 to $1.1 million. It made pretty short work of that and sold for $1,706,000. And the inscription on it dates it over here. There's an inscription panel over here, and it dates it to 1764. So sort of right at the sort of first third of the Qialong Emperor's reign, first half. But absolutely great thing. He took a real interest in his collection more than a lot of emperors did. He liked to catalog his collections and his jades, his rhino horns, and all of that sort of thing. And of course, they made a lot of things to please him, to entertain him, because he loved creative things in the arts. And then we're going to get on to this important Chinese art. This was a very good catalog, and it was sort of overshadowed for some by the Tianminlou collection, but it shouldn't have been, because there were some absolutely great things in here. And one of the things that I thought was absolutely fascinating was this sudden, it seems to me to be a fairly sudden rise in the values of month cups. We saw one last month that sold for $200,000 against an estimate of $120,000. Here we had some that were estimated to $153,000. These were sold at Sotheby's about just a little over 22 years ago. And the estimate was, as I said, the high estimate was $153,000. This particular cup, this really nice orchid cup, it was a beautiful one, beautiful quality. And as I keep saying, you can pull it in, take a look at it. The detail, the drawing, and all that was absolutely great. And it's fully inscribed, of course, as they always are. And it ended up selling for $289,000. Not bad for a 2.5-inch high cup. All right. And then the next one over, I want to make sure we get to the right one here. This one. This is the Narcissus month cup. Also very nice, also Kangxi period. Again, very beautifully decorated, and the enamels were all in nice condition. The cup was obviously perfect, all right? and also inscribed. And this one sold for $289,823. All right, so it does seem that these gem-like little cups, especially the Kangxi ones, which nearly all the month cups are, have gotten a real strong interest lately among collectors. Okay, and then we're going to skip along over to this. This is the Tianchu Ping, beautiful example, Qialong. The color on this thing is just mind-blowing. All right, the brilliant color on it, the brilliant way the dragon is drawn, the absolutely fine iron details, and the beautiful, beautiful shading of the Famil Rose enamels here in these clouds and the swirling wave base. You've seen this wave base many times on late 19th century pieces. Well, this is where it's really sort of got its start, done in these colors, and but just spectacular color. And what's wonderful about this vase is that the shape of it really, because of the ground color, really shows. You really see the shape of it. Your eye isn't confused by the edges at all, and it's just a glowing example. It was estimated at $2.3 to $3.1 million. All right, and it ended up selling for $2.8 million. So sort of right in the center of its estimate, which is always a nice thing. All right, but a really, really great example. And one of the most unusual pieces that they sold, and I think this was sort of a relative bargain. I mean, the Tianchu Ping was absolutely spectacular too. Was this Qialong tea dust glaze with Famil Rose elephant handle jar? This was quite a thing. It was 15 inches tall, which is a nice big size. Beautiful example. The tea dust glaze on it was really fine. Come over and look at it. Really, really, really fine. Great color. Very even. Beautifully done. And then this superb enameling up here with this relief work. You've seen they did this form with this raised roux heads around the shoulder. Were done non-imperially in the Qialong period and later. But this is an imperial one with this great with these chevron devices going up with these beautiful sleepy-eyed elephants. Just a great example, and it ended up doing fine. But I think this was, relatively speaking, a particularly great buy. It went for $1,135,000. That's a lot of money. It's a ton of money, but this is a really unusual example, I think. And I just thought it was wonderful. I love it when they do monochromes and mix them with Famil Rose enamels. I just thought this was great. And on the next page, there's a very good large detail of it. And if you want to learn about coloration on Qialong examples, really good coloration. This one, the picture is so big to begin with, you can pull it in, and you can really see the detail here and here on how the enamels, how even or a little bit uneven they were. But you get a better sense of the characteristics of it, the beautiful way the eyes were done, and then down here you have these lappet panels running down, and so forth to the shoulder. Okay, but it's something that it can give you an eyeful, and you can learn about it. Just a great example. And then on to this was maybe one of the great dragon. Hold on a second here. Well, it wasn't really a jade. It's an animal forward jade. Hold on a second. Okay, hold on. There, this is the iron red and underglazed blue dragon Meiping vase. This brought a lot of money. 27 centimeters, 10 inches tall, but beautiful quality. The iron red on this, the decoration of the iron red on this, like the Tianchu Ping, very good. Beautifully done, very clear, very sharp, very crisply drawn. There's the tail going down into the water, and there's the wave pattern at the bottom and all that good stuff. And it ended up selling for $3,888,000, above its high estimate of $3.19 million, but a superb piece. Okay, and this came from reputedly from a private collection. There's no other history known to it where it came from, but just an absolutely outstandingly pretty example, and it did just fine, no doubt about it. And now on to page 90. is this. This was the large yellow jade animal, Eastern Zhao dynasty. Beautiful thing. This is a fairly large plaque. This plaque was quite large, 8 inches in diameter, which is unusual for these. One of these big mythical beasts on it. Had a big estimate, $3 million to $3.8 million, and it had no trouble with that. It sold for $3.4 million, but a highly desirable type of jade, extremely rare. There are but a handful of these around in this size. And I think that had obviously a lot to do with the price that it realized. But that's a good price, all right. And then on to this was the double. This was a really great piece of jade, if you like jades. This was a beautiful yellow double vase Qialong jade. But the carving quality on this is just amazing. And if you pull it in, you take a look at the dragon, how he's standing up on his hind legs, one arm holding onto one of the vases, and the other hand resting on the other vase with his head and neck coiled back. Just a great carving all the way down. And then the legs, he's standing on some lingbai and some roots with baby chimeras coming up the bottom and so forth. Again, the wave pattern around it. Just a great example, and I'll go back to it here for a second. And it was just a beautiful color. The color of this jade was absolutely superb. And it was estimated at $1.9 to $2.5 million, and it ended up bringing $2,109,000. So again, right in the center of its estimate, which is fine, but a very unusual color, really rare color, just a great color. Okay, and now on to. This was something that amazed me. This was a set of soapstone carvings. Those of you who love soapstones, this was an extremely rare set, probably Kangxi period, of very rare 18 immortals. All right, and this particular piece, these pieces were carved by a well-known carver of the day. He got Imperial orders for carvings. They have found paperworks on it on this fellow. His name was Yang Yuxuan, and he was a 17th century carver. And they actually found published stories, articles at the time, sort of like advertisements, like in the Gazette. And one of them says, Yang Yuxuan is a capable carver of Shushan stone. All his figures, birds, animals, and his vessels are exquisite in the extreme. Collectors compete to engage him. That's a quote from a publication from the period when he lived. So it's sort of interesting. It sounds like something you'd read, in an 18th century American newspaper about a craftsman of some kind. But these were really fine, really beautiful, and they ended up selling for about what the hell did they sell for? $1,722,000 for soapstone. These were not jades, okay, and they were only 2 inches tall each. They're very small. But you can come in and look at them, and they are so charming and so beautifully done. Just great. And $1,722,834 for the lot. I think the estimate was pretty steep. They sold at the low end of their estimate. But I think whoever the collector was, they really loved them. Maybe he didn't want to sell them. But it's a great collection, and it shows you that not everything has to be jade. Well-done soapstones can bring a lot of money. All right, and it goes on, and after that is the Youngman collection. I'm not going to go into it all because I don't want to go on for too long here. But the Youngman collection did very well also, extremely well. It had some great jades in it. There were other things from the Youngman collection that were sold in March and also did phenomenally well, including that great blue and white dragon moon flask that was unmarked that brought almost $1 million. And the rest of the jade collection was sold early in April. So that's it. All right. I will put some links down below to these catalogs and to the video that you saw at the beginning, and maybe I think there's another one on there where they talk about the Tianminlou collection as well, and we'll get that all done. If you like the videos, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to us over on Bidamount.com. Take part, come to the forum, use the preview assistant if you need help with something, or the ID assistant, or the second opinion thing. Come over and see us, okay? And leave a comment. A thumbs up, always appreciated. All right, we'll see you all on Friday with the regular video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.